Hello, and welcome to the first IRL stream ever, I suppose. And it is a stream that I have wanted to do for quite some time. We're going to be doing the PC building stream with heavy emphasis on education, as what I've got is a really basic PC stuff, and so, as we always do, there will be an extensive amount of over-explanation, because that's what we do around here. But, hello. I suppose we gotta get through all of the IRL face reveal stuff. But yeah. Hello. As to the question earlier, the hardest part of it is going to be looking at the camera, because I'm so used to being able to just look at the screen. Kappa, the numbers are 64, 128, 256. You doubled your 64 there, but that's what's coming up, Vtuber. But yeah. So, I'm really excited about this. I was actually really disappointed when I built my PC a bit ago, right? Because I had to do that when my motherboard took a shit. So that was annoying. And I did not get a chance to do that on stream because I didn't have a PC to actually run it. Now, the fortunate part of this is that in having done an update and bringing it up, don't worry. I mean, I've got to work. We'll turn into a hand cam stream later, so the tats will be on display for sure. And so I brought it up to parents, and they were like, oh, well, we should probably update the computer. We've had the same computer for like 10 years, which is true. And I built that one too. And it works great. And it has continued to work. But then Windows, I should say Microsoft, decided to be like, oh, no more support for 10. And I think that their PC is old enough that it doesn't support PPM, which is required for Windows 11. And instead of buying a TPM module, you can get a hardware piece of TPM module, and then working with an old computer is like probably just time to upgrade. So that's where we're at. See, Weaver, we're at the point again where I can't tell if you're joking or not. I don't know if you're serious or not, but yes. Anyway, this is me. Hello. Oh, some things to mention about the setup. I'm using my phone for a camera. It's doing a fine job, but it's not like the best camera. So, work with me. And also, I don't exactly have studio lighting. This is my office. So, it's office lighting. But the other thing is that I'm using a free app called Droid Cam on my phone to do the camera and funnel it in as a webcam. And that is a free version, which is going to put a watermark on it every hour. And then I have to watch an ad. So every once in a while, we're going to have an ad break. Not for you guys, but me. I have an ad break because I have to watch another ad to get rid of the watermark from the free app. I thought about actually just paying for it, because it's like $15. And if I keep finding more reasons to IRL streams, I will likely do that. But for this first one, I'm not gonna do that. Yes, now the streamer gets the ads. The turns have truly tabled. So yeah, but if it should come up that I'm not paying attention because I'm working on the computer and the watermark comes back, just fire off a sound alert or something to alert me that I need to watch the ad, is really what I'm getting at. Because I don't want to keep that stupid watermark up there while I'm doing something like important or relevant. Another note, I have the background music I have the background music way down, hopefully. Hopefully it sounds relatively down. I'm going to try to have the music low enough that I can easily sort of low pass it out. If I want to go back and update, or rather edit and then upload the like a standalone video for the tutorial. But I don't want to sit here in silence. So part of the reason is the music's playing for me, because I have it, but I also don't want you all to be sitting here in silence when I'm not talking. So we've got a little bit of music. It's pretty low, so it should be able to get stripped out. Thank you. I love this shirt very much. It really speaks to many of my passions of being PC tech as well as quality engineer. It really just fit. So it's one of my favorite t-shirts, to be sure. Okay. Now, the thing is I look like a developer. Like, I look like everyone else at my job, except I have the long hair. I have more of the long hair than most. So I fit in where I work is really what it comes down to. I'm a bit of a stereotype. It works out. It's fine. Okay. So first, I'm going to run through what I have for the PC. I'm going to run through what I've got, and then we will talk about why I chose them, how to choose them. We're going to look at what we've got, step back, and talk about how you choose what you want for PC, and then we'll move on to actually putting it together. That's going to be the process. So real quick, let's look at what we've got. We've got AMD Ryzen 7700X. This is a last generation part, but still very good. For basic PC that's not going to see any gaming or anything, it's fine. Honestly, you could game on it. It'd be fine. For that, I have a very basic air cooler, the Thermalright. Thermalright's kind of a budget brand. Their whole shtick is keeping costs low. But they are not like store brand shitty. They actually have been putting together decent competitive stuff at low cost. And since this isn't going to be seeing much action, should be fine. We got a motherboard. Gigabyte, reasonable brand, B650, AM5 socket. We'll talk about that in a minute. Goes with the Ryzen. We have 32 gigs, two 16 gig sticks, 6,000 megahertz speed. We'll talk about all that detail later. Very normal. 2 sticks of 16. SSD, NVMe style, 1 terabyte. Normal. Very ordinary. We have a hand-me-down power supply because that was my old power supply. Corsair HX850i, a good power supply, but in the process of troubleshooting my PC, as it was on the fritz, I replaced this because I was like, oh, it might be a power delivery issue. And it wasn't. So that means that this should still be a good power supply, and there's no reason to buy a new one when I can just avoid some e-waste and hand one down. So, HX850i. And finally, we've got regular case. We'll look more at that later. And then we also have a new 27-inch monitor, because they are still working with a ridiculously old 22-inch monitor that was just generations ago of mine. I hand down a lot of my parts to the family members. 22-inch, 1080p, I think, Samsung. I think it's 13 years old, maybe? It's incredibly old. And they're like, maybe we could get a bigger monitor. I was like, you need a bigger monitor. We'll get you a bigger monitor. We will do that. And so, monitor. Now, you may notice what we do not have is a video card. The video card is also going to be a hand-me-down. It's an old EVGA 1080, the GTX 1080, that is in Kappa's hands currently. It was mine. Sold it to Kappa on the cheaps. She used it for a while, and now it's been hanging down because I sell it to you for cheap, I'll have you know. Yes, I casually drink water out of a mason jar. That's a totally normal thing to do. Why is that the distraction? Anyway, so yes. Yes, you are the weird one still, see. You think pretzels are a dessert. I don't even want to hear it about my mason jar. It's good. That's a good point, Skowaltz. I'm just casually drinking, like, a whole pint of vodka out of my mason jar. That's the thing. Oh, Skowaltz, you've unleashed a monster. I have done that for years. Years have I been drinking out of a mason jar. Okay, so I don't have the 1080 for the video card. But, fortunately, any of the modernist, the last 2 generations of AMD cards have a integrated GPU, and I think that's true for Intel as well. So, even without a dedicated GPU, like a 1080, you can still build a computer and get a display out. It's usually just going to be one display. It's not going to do you very much. It's not going to get you very far. It's not going to play any games, but it will run a display. It will probably run videos on YouTube. I haven't really exactly done much testing on how decent an internal GPU is anymore, but it will run and operate. So we can get started here with just the internal GPU. Also, I'm probably not actually going to do any of the, like, Windows installing and stuff. We're probably just going to mechanically put all of the pieces together tonight, and I'll do the rest later. We'll probably try to get it to post, maybe. We'll see. Depends how long I end up yakking and talking. How long this whole thing takes, all told. Okay, so that's the bit we have, and the main internals of the system. So that's where we're at. Okay, so let's talk about how you actually make decisions around putting a computer together, or parting out, as the term goes. Parting out a computer as to what goes together. How do you get compatibility? What do you need to get? How much do you need to buy? All this stuff. So the first piece that you need to make a decision on is going to be the CPU. The CPU is sort of the first place that you need to make a decision, and that will help lead you into most of the other parts to make decisions around. There's a few other more complicated questions that you could start from, but we're just gonna, based on, like, I just need a normal computer, where do I start? CPU. With the CPU, you have essentially the primary decision is, do you want an Intel CPU or do you want an AMD CPU? Those are the two main brands of commercial, I don't know, consumer is the term. Consumer CPUs on the market. There are a few other technical CPUs. There's ARM CPUs. NVIDIA's trying to make an ARM CPU. Qualcomm, Snapdragon, those make, like, phone CPUs, and they might be trying to bust into the desktop market, but those are not mainstream. Especially if we're talking about first CPU, like, first computer you ever make, which is kind of what we're working from the assumption here. First computer ever make, AMD, Intel. Right now, I would say that AMD has a leg up over Intel. For instance, if you wanted a quick one like suggestion, and you're going to be gaming on this PC, the best gaming CPU on the market right now is the AMD 9800X 3D. That's the sort of best bang for the buck gaming CPU. There's an argument for the 9950X 3D being a better overall processor, but it's much more expensive, so you don't need that. And then there's a lot of other ones in the spectrum that you could pick when maybe you're not going to be gaming as much, or you're on more of a budget. There's lots of things. But that's the main first choice, AMD or Intel. So we have an AMD. So once we have made a decision as to what CPU we want, what do we do with this information to make the next decision? And so I just ignore you guys. You know that. This is also why I did not put on chat on screen, because I was like, I can't edit this into a video if you lot are just on screen rambling about anything and everything. I can't deal with that shit. So you can continue your arguments in the sidebar as I continue to do a tutorial. I can't be here all night. I got a PC to put together, like, for money. I'm being paid to do this. Like, this is a thing I do. Okay. So we have our AMD CPU. What do we need to know out of this? So the main thing we need to know is, you can see here, socket AM5. So that's the main piece of, could you do me a solid, man? You were doing so well. There we go. No, really? So the AMD socket AM5. The socket type is the information you need from your CPU. Intel has a different naming scheme. It's like LGA 15 something or other. LGA stands for land grid array. They're both on land grid arrays style sockets, but that's the naming scheme. AMD has a better naming scheme. It's a lot more consumer friendly. We're on AMD 5 or AM5 now. The Zen 3 architecture CPUs were on AM4, and then further back you had AM3. It's easy. So that's the piece of information you need. It's a socket AM5. That's your primary piece of compatibility from your CPU. And you will notice on our motherboard, socket AM5. That's the matching socket AM5. So that's how you need to know that your motherboard is compatible with your CPU. Now, there's lots of other things that go with that, finding a decent brand. You know, there's a lot of motherboards on the market. But, you know, price, reviews, that's the main piece of information, like, for decision making in a lot of cases. But the AM5 is the socket that it's going to fit. So another piece of information is this B650. This B650 is indicative that that's the chipset that it's on. This is the B650 chipset, which is kind of also described down here. So there are a couple different chipsets that come out with each generation of CPU. The B650 came out with the 7 series, which is what we've got here, the 7700. So those are directly matching. There's the 650, there's a 670, there's a 670E. Those are kind of the different chipsets. All of those chipsets will be compatible with this CPU. They just have slightly different features, usually around the number of PCIe lanes, maybe the RAM support, how much, maybe one supports 128 gigs, one maybe supports 192. There's some nuance in there, but they all work. Now, within AM5, there is also a B850, 870, and 870E, because those came out with the 9000 series, of AMD CPUs, but they are also compatible with the 7000 series. Either the 600 or 800 series of chipsets on the motherboards are compatible with all of the things on AM5. Older ones may require a firmware update, which is more complicated, especially if you're new. So it may be better to try to sort of directly match. So we've got a 7000 series, so we're matching with a 650. If I had a 9000, I would match with an 800, which it's a shame that those numbers don't match. That would be a lot more clear, but yeah, 9000 goes with 800 series chipset. The other piece of information around the motherboard is its form factor. So what form factor it is helps determine what kind of case you need. Most motherboards are ATX, which is a certain size, a certain screw hole position, certain expectations around that. ATX. They don't mention it nearly as much on the box. I had to look at the back to find that it says specifically that it's an ATX motherboard. And ATX is kind of the standard. It gives you a little more space to work with. It's not cramming stuff together. It's not overly complicated. So that's generally the standard. There are other ones like micro ATX, which is just much smaller, fit into small cases. There is an eATX, which is not a real standard, but it's things bigger than ATX. When you're asking how much do I charge? So I don't usually like advertise outside of like family members and stuff. Part of it is determined by the complexity of the build. This one will probably be around probably charge like $200 or so. Part of that is because it's inheriting some of my parts, so that price will go in there. And a lot of times, sometimes I'll just like, hey koala. Sometimes it'll just work for like tips if it's needed, just what they can provide, whatever like that. But I haven't done sort of, hey priestess, thank you for coming. I haven't done like external advertised stuff. Well, I say for a long time, but I never really successfully did it. I did advertise to do it for a while, like after college, but it's an incredibly tough market to try to like find people who actually want it and will pay for it and are not scammers. So, yeah. But mostly just like within friends or family, I would end up putting together stuff. And yeah, depends on the complexity. This is a really simple build, so just like a couple $100. Because all of the parts that I have were like $800, plus one of my parts that's old, and then another part that Kappa's tossing in and all that stuff. So it can then like that's a decent way to try to judge other system integrators, though. So other brands that do this sort of work, try to determine like what's their upcharge. So yeah. Where was I? Ah, yes. Form factor. About 1,500. Well, yeah, it depends. So this PC was 800 in parts. And so I'll probably ask my parents for like $1,000 to cover all of it, and then make some money for the effort that goes into it, depending on what you're building and the parts cost and all of that. It's complicated. Anyway, so we covered the form factor, right? ATX form factor, ATX-K. That's the choice there. So the next piece. The next piece is the RAM. So the RAM is another piece that requires compatibility with the CPU and the motherboard. The main way to ensure your RAM is correct is for every motherboard, there is a QVL, which is the qualified vendor list. And the qualified vendor list provides a list of like actual SKUs of RAM that is supported RAM and is sort of like, it's not guaranteed to work, but it avoids awkward questions if you need to warranty anything. Because it's like, well, it's on the qualified vendor list, it should work. Going away from the qualified vendor list might work, but you're kind of rolling the dice in that case. So sticking with the qualified vendor list is valuable. One thing to note about AMD CPUs. So we're going to go into a tangent a little bit more complicated. So there are a lot of speeds of RAM. So this is DDR5 RAM, which is the current sort of generation of DDR5. All modern motherboard and CPUs are going to be working with DDR5. Older ones would have been DDR4, and then before that was DDR3. Of note, each generation has a different location of their NOT and a different pin count. So you should not be able to put in the wrong type of RAM unless you force it and break them. So be cognizant of that. We'll get to that when we're actually putting it together. But within DDR5, there's a lot of... You guys want to see the mason jar? Here. Here's the mason jar. See? The mason jar. Also, technically, I think this is... Well, no, it's a ball mason jar. So, anyway, there's the mason jar. So within a generation of DDR5, there are different speeds. This is it easy to see? It's not really. So this is 6,000 megahertz DDR5. It ranges for this one between 4,300-ish, I think is the lowest. You can get like up to 6,000, and then there's like 7,200. There's 8,666, I think is the highest I've seen. There's a range of those. Now, AMD CPUs, both the 7,000 series and the 9,000 series, their recommendation is a 6,000 megahertz RAM speed. There's a very specific reason that they recommend 6,000 megahertz, and it involves matching speeds between the cache of the CPU and the RAM, which helps to avoid any kind of latencies between those two. So it's the most efficient and fastest to get the 6,000. You can sort of see improvements with higher speed RAM, but it's not really worth the cost. And so that's 6,000 megahertz is kind of the gold standard for AMD CPU. That's what we have here. Let's see. Then we have those considerations. We talked about the case and the fact that it's ATX, which matches this. Another thing that has to be ATX is the power supply. Also needs to be an ATX power supply. That's, again, just about form factor more than anything else, making sure that it fits. So you have an ATX motherboard in an ATX case with an ATX power supply. Stuff fits. Another form factor that may need a separate power supply would be an ITX. ITX needs a different form factor, so that's something to consider. But generally, that's not too much a concern. The main thing you need to pay attention to with power supplies, however, is the amount of power provided. So generally speaking, the number mentioned, HX850, is the number of watts provided by the power supply. So this provides 850 watts of power to the system. 850 is on the high moderate side. If you have a very basic computer, like this is, before we put a GPU in it, it would probably run on 450 watts, most likely. Is that a soundboard or a keyboard? That is a keyboard. Well, I guess technically it's an electric piano behind me, which I wish I could play better than I can. But I'm at the phase where I used to play it when I was young, or I used to be able to play piano a little bit when I was young. But now, in order to get back to being able to play it, I have to practice a bunch of boring things like scales just to get my fingers working properly, and that's super duper boring. I don't like boring things, and so I don't really use it, unfortunately. Someday, if I get super bored about a lot of other things, I might try to take another stab at it, but the current juncture, I can't play it very well, but I do still have it. It's back there. That is what that is. Power supply. How much power do you need? Technically, you can calculate how much power you need. Most parts describe their total power draw, TDP, which is not total drawn power. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it stands for. Like this one is a, does it say on here on the back? I think it's 145 watt, which is one of the like hungriest parts. CPU, GPU are the hungriest power draws. So you can get away with like 450, 600 on a low end computer. 850 was running my generally higher end computer. So it's plenty. The most effective way to figure out if you've got a decent power supply is if you have your GPU, they usually have a recommended power supply size. A lot of times 100. The higher ones are starting to get like 900, 1000. You have like a 5090 and stuff. So that's a way to find out. Going overboard with the power on your power supply is neither good nor is it bad. Having more available power than your system needs doesn't change anything. There are some very advanced, complicated things that you can look at, try to determine the efficiency curve of the power supply, because if you're drawing very little power compared to how much power it can provide, it works at a different efficiency than if you're in, 40%, 70%, 90% of the available power. There's an efficiency curve. And so if you really want to maximize your efficiency, there are some things you can do to do that, but it's not really necessary. You just want to knock. The biggest consideration is if you want to have a little bit extra in case you want to upgrade down the line. It really sucks. If you want to upgrade your GPU, like you get the opportunity to upgrade your GPU, suddenly it demands more power than you had before, and you're like, oh, I cheaped out on my power supply, and now I have to buy a new one too. So that's one of those pieces that you can kind of future-proof a little bit. If you're like, I do want to upgrade my GPU, maybe go for the power supply that will support the future GPU instead of just the current GPU. Like that's one of those little things that can help you in the long run. And then, is there anything else about the you discussed? I don't think so. Okay, so then the other thing to make note of. Hold on. What am I taking a stance on? Hold on, Go Balls. What do you? Oh, are you talking about pickles? Is that the question? Pickles, pickle juice, and general vinegar things? I really like pickle juice, and I do enjoy drinking pickle water. Pickle juice is good, actually. Pickle juice is both delicious and also extremely limited in calories. So pickles and then drinking pickle juice are an extremely diet-friendly snack. So I usually don't drink olive brine. I'm not that crazy about I don't usually have that many olives. And I don't go out of my way to drink pickle juice, but I will drink pickle brine. That doesn't bother me. It's tasty. I like vinegar stuff. Vinegar is a flavor I enjoy tremendously, actually. So I like that acidic, sour brightness. Okay. So then the last thing we have in front of us that I haven't covered is the cooling solution. So this is an air cooler. If you are deciding what kind of cooling solution to have, you have 3 main choices, but if you're a beginner, it's really 2. So you have air cooling, you have all-in-ones, which is liquid cooling, but it's sort of an enclosed loop. You don't need to maintain it or anything. It's an all-in-one piece, radiator pump that goes to the CPU. And so that's one. And then there's also custom liquid cooling loops. But that's complicated. Not really for a beginner discussion like this, but it is a thing that technically there is also immersion cooling, but that's like, we're definitely not going to talk about that. And so when you're trying to determine your cooling solution, there are mainly 1, but technically 2 considerations. So one is, will it disperse enough heat? So you have to have enough of a cooler for your CPU and your application. This is a very light air cooler. Air cooling in general is lighter than an all-in-one. This is a very light one, but we have a relatively low-tier CPU. It's not going to go crazy. And I know the use case is very minimal. Like, they're not playing games. They're not, like, hammering spreadsheets. They're not rendering anything. They're just watching things on the internet because they're parents, and that's what they do. So this is fine. If you are doing gaming, you probably want to move up to an all-in-one. That's what I use. All-in-ones come in different sizes, usually from like 120 millimeter, 240 millimeter, 360 millimeter, and then maybe 480, but that's like extreme. And what those measurements are is essentially how many fans fit on it. Because the most common fan right now is a 120 by 120 millimeter fan, which is what this is. This is a 120 millimeter SE 120, and that's the fan size. And so for coolers with a radiator, you have 1, which is 120 millimeter. You could have 2, which is a 240 millimeter, and you could have 3, the 360 millimeter. And you know, bigger radiator, better cooler, Papa John, right? So like, that's how you basically, if you need a lot more cooling, bigger radiator. That of course has implications on the size of the case that you need. That is also, with air cooling, you also need to be very careful about the case for a very different reason, actually. The issue with air cooling is that they are towers, and so they sit on top of the CPU, which in a typical case means that they stick out to the side. And depending on the width of your case, they could actually be too large and you can't close the side panel. And so you need to be very careful about making sure that your CPU cooler is not so tall that it doesn't fit into your case for air cooling purposes. That's much less of an issue with all-in-ones, because the pump that sits on the CPU is very low and small. The issue then is that you have to have somewhere to put the radiator. So a lot of medium-sized cases, which would be called a mid-tower, they probably don't fit a 360 millimeter. So you need to go for like a 240. If that's not enough, then you might need a bigger case, like a full tower, the term for a bigger case like that, and get a 360 millimeter. So that's where you're at. You gotta fit it into the case, and it's gotta be big enough to, cool your application as necessary. So that's pretty much how... Oh, I didn't talk about the SSD. Okay. So, obvious choice that's going into your SSD is the size, right? You need enough storage space to suit your needs. This is a 1 terabyte. I think 1 terabyte's a pretty comfortable size for typical use. If you play a lot of games and you want to have a lot of games installed, or you do any kind of video editing or video production, and you need a lot of space to store all this random shit, you might need a bigger one, right? After you deal with the size, however, you need to decide on the form factor, you could say. So this is an NVMe drive. These fit flush with the motherboard. They connect to the PCIe connections, the same thing that you connect your GPU to, PCIe. The alternative is a SATA, S-A-T-A, SATA drive. Those are a little more traditional hard drive shape. They're a 2.5 inch. They're about that big, kind of like a credit card. Very thin, 2.5 millimeters tall. And those you have to connect with wires, a SATA power and a SATA data cable that then goes to the motherboard. Those are slower, not because of the drive themselves, but rather SATA is an older protocol, an older format, and does not transfer data as fast as a PCIe link. So they can be fine for like a backup drive, but you're just leaving performance on the table by not getting an NVMe drive. There's a lot of compatibility complications that have been introduced lately that you didn't used to be there. There is the PCIe generation that is a compatibility, well, not a concern with NVMe drives. So PCIe is a backwards and forwards compatible technology. So it will not ever not work. If it fits in the slot, it works. But it's possible that if you put it into an older generation, like if I were running a PC that only had PCIe Gen 3, and I put this PCIe Gen 4 drive in, it may not reach its full transfer speed. And that's all that would happen. It would just be maybe a little slower. So it's not a crisis, but it could happen. But it's worth keeping in mind whether you're getting a Gen 4 or Gen 5. That's the main one. Now, Gen 4 and 5 are the main active ones. What's the best place to get computer parts? So, right now, my preferred place to get computer parts is Micro Center. Micro Center is a sort of dedicated tech retailer. They do have brick and mortar stores in some places, but not everywhere. They're not huge. You can order online, I believe. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you can order online from Micro Center. And so, like, they've done the least shitty stuff to people, is really what it comes down to. So I used to buy heavily from Newegg, and then they started being shitty. So, like, their return policies got shitty. They were doing some super shady stuff with, like, they liked to try to bundle parts with, like, oh, buy this and you'll get this, and they'd just be offloading old shit. But the old shit that they were offloading at one point was, there was a power supply that was, like, known for lighting on fire, and they were just like, we gotta get rid of these. Blah. Like, don't like that. A lot of people have good luck on Amazon. I'm generally trying to not buy stuff from Amazon, though, because Amazon and Bezos are shitty. So, you know, but of course, everybody's got to choose their battles on that front. So, I like Micro Center the best. Yeah, I've always had good luck with Micro Center. And on that subject, that actually reminds me, when I was shopping for the parts, one of the best ways, if you are new and you want to build a computer,
and you're not sure about the compatibility, one of the things that places often do is they do a bundle. Micro Center, I trust a little more that their bundles are not dog shit, which is the thing. Like, other places can put together bundles, but I feel like you're getting more screwed, potentially, than with Micro Center. But, like, I actually got a bundle, so, like, the bundle is usually the CPU, the RAM, and the motherboard. That's usually the bundle. The main trio of, like, compatibility that you need to concern yourself with can often be bundled together as, well, a bundle. And you usually get a discount on those. The thing about those, of course, is that they are usually, for some reason, they want to offload them, so they're offloading for them for cheap. In this case, it's because they're last generation part. A lot of times that's fine. This is still a good CPU. There's no reason to, like, dislike that. I think I saved, like, $150 by getting the bundle. And all of the parts are still fine. You're getting a bundle, it's always valuable to look at each individual part and then look at their reviews specifically rather than, like, the bundle reviews, so you know, like, at least kind of what you're getting yourself into. And it can be useful to double check the compatibility, but usually they've dealt with that fine and it's okay. How long have I been streaming? I'm like, surely, have I been streaming? Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised that my watermark hasn't come back, but it will soon. Okay. One thing that I didn't mention, that I do want to go back and mention, the power supply. So one of the things about power supplies, there is a, like, I don't know who maintains it, but there is a power supply tier list on the internet that is, like, the gospel tier list to use for power supplies, because power supplies can be sort of difficult to know if it sucks or not. And there's a power supply tier list that can be useful to sort of identify at least that something doesn't suck total ass. And so that can be used as, like, a reference point. The tier list is a giant spreadsheet, though, so it can be a little bit overwhelming to try to work with, especially if you're not familiar with, like, tech and, you know, what you're looking at and what anything means, and you don't have the SKUs handy. But I just wanted to make sure I mentioned the power supply tier list, because that will get mentioned a great deal if you start looking online and you're like, you know, is this power supply good? Inevitably, somebody's like, check the tier list, or somebody will come in and be like, it's a B on the tier list, and, you know, whatever. So that is where we're at with all the things we have and how you pick. The only thing I guess I didn't mention, because I don't have it, is the GPU. Fortunately, GPUs are, like, super duper standardized at this point. If you get a normal GPU, it will fit onto a motherboard. Like, you can't really go wrong. It'll fit. It might not fit in the case. That's an issue. Expensive cards are huge, and they might not fit your case, but they will fit in the motherboard. So you can't totally botch getting a GPU. Aside from, of course, making sure you have enough power to supply for the GPU. That's pretty much it. The other general advice I'd give around GPUs is that NVIDIA's kind of being a total bastard right now, so I am leaning more towards AMD and their GPUs. AMD is also a giant megacorp, so my love is limited and merely slightly higher than NVIDIA, but, you know, I guess we'll take what we can get. But NVIDIA's been a real sack of shit lately. Just tossing that out there. Yeah. I guess I didn't mention, boy, there's no way I'm good. Well, I guess I might be able to hack these together and edit it to be more concise if I get down to it later. Anyway, something I didn't mention for the cooler. Generally speaking, coolers are provided all of the hardware necessary to fit on pretty much any kind of socket. But it is worth making sure that whatever cooler you're getting does have support for your CPU socket type on your motherboard, because they do have to screw in a specific way, and so that's a compatibility that you want to make sure you cover. Okay, so that's looking at all the things we have, and now I think we can start getting going on putting it together. How long will I be on stream? Well, I mean, I will likely be streaming for a couple more hours just because I have to put this thing together. Once I get going, though, which is like the next step, I'm going to get the camera moved, and it's going to be a hand cam, because now we're going to be putting together all of the actual bits, and then we're going to be getting much closer up on all the stuff. Let me just move all this to my storage table over here. We'll be moving to our unboxing portion of today's activities. Let me see if I can jump to the Get Pro again and have it shut up. Hopefully you can hear me. Show me an ad, please, for another hour. All right, well, I'm just gonna come back here, I guess, and talk for a hot second. Okay, good. It's running an ad, so I'm just gonna sit over here while it runs that ad, and then I'll get the camera moved, because I only have the one camera, so I don't have a second camera to be the hand cam. So we gotta hoist this one up to go do the thing, and that's where we're at. All right. Well, what has everybody been yelling about in here? I mean, mostly the freaking pickle thing. I see there was also a mention of black licorice. I do not like black licorice. It generally... Oh, don't worry. It's not an ad for you. It's an ad for me. Like, don't worry. My phone is showing me an ad so that I can ignore it and remove the watermark. Yeah, but generally I don't really care for like anise flavored things. Shut up. We have to get away. You. Okay. Alright, now let's see here. Target. Okay. Welcome to the hand cam portion of today's stream. And the unboxing portion, I suppose. Let's see. How do we want to... What order do we want to do this in? Let's go ahead and get the case opened up. You're so about the tattoo. Here's the tattoo. Hello. It'll be back. Don't worry. All right, I gotta cut this box open. I have not prepped any of this. Okay. All right, this first time I've opened any of this stuff. Hopefully none of it's broken. That would be a real annoyance.
Curse you, box. Fighting my box here. There we go. Okay. Ugh. All right. We have a very ordinary case because, well, they're parents. We're not exactly here to give them... I actually had to go out of my way to find something that was not going to be, like, RGB, actually. I was like, I just need a normal-ass case, please. With some fans that are not RGB, if possible. And I did it, eventually. It's a case. I'm sure none of you have ever seen one of these before. Wow, it's the outside. It's totally normal. Ooh, those thumb screws suck. Well, that's what you get with cheap stuff. Don't love it. I mean, I guess at least it does have thumb screws. So we got that going for us. Oh, and they're captured. All right. All right. That's not total dog shit. I accept. This is plastic and not glass, by the way. All right. There's the case. Here's the hardware. Give me that. Thank you. Use the threads for the SATA drives, like I mentioned. Oh, you've never watched, what is it, Love, Death, and Robot? Is that what got brought up? I think I saw that. I like Love, Death, and Robots. Yeah. Love, Death, and Robots is specifically in a format that I think should be used more often. Like, I really like that style of, I mean, it's kind of like the modern short story, right? It's like they're not going through a whole season of stories. It's just like one episode, you get a whole thought, a whole, like, experience, and I kind of like that as an option. Like, I don't always want to have to watch, like, a whole season to do it, you know? All right, let's move that case out of the way for a hot second. Because what we really need to start on is the motherboard. That's really where we need to start putting stuff together. So, of note, I should put this out there. Doing this properly would involve an anti-static wristband. That's the proper thing to do. You should have like a anti-static mat. You should have a anti-static wristband. I think I should actually move this camera just a bit, because I feel like I'm trying to work closer to me, and it... Oh, lordy. Yeah, so the suggestion, of course, is to use anti-static. So the thing about an anti-static wristband is you can get away without using it, but you have to be pretty diligent in making sure that you are consistently getting rid of any static to be at an equal potential with the case. The case is ground in a PC. It all gets electronically connected. And so you should be touching the case and things to make sure that you are at equal potential. So a static band actually just has like a little metal contact that goes to your wrist, and then it connects to the case so that you are sort of consistently at equal potential, but like touching the case does essentially the same thing. You just have to be cautious and diligent, and you know, I usually do it that way, and I haven't had a problem. Okay. Speaking of, so this is a motherboard. This specifically, this is a static protection bag. These are useful to keep around just in case you have to, you know, store a motherboard again, because this will protect it from static. I also generally use them to sit on as the workspace. Okay. This is a motherboard. Ta-da! What else do we have in here? Yep, all of the fixins. Do we have the quick start guide? Installation guide, great. The basics, cool. This is useful mostly because it talks about how to put the CPU in, which, I'll be honest, I've only done this generation of AMDs one other time, so it can be, like, you want to make sure you're doing it right. And it's a little bit weird because it's the LGA, the land grid array. And so, like, you have all of the little pins under this protective thing, and it's a little bit weird how you put a CPU in there, and so it's good to have the instruction. So let's go over the anatomy of a motherboard, shall we? So back here, these are your IOs. This is the IO panel, inputs, outputs. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. You've worked with this and seen it. I can't believe this has a PS2 connector. This is a mouse keyboard connector, that very old style. It's called a PS2. Here you can see the HDMI port. This one does have, like I said, all these CPUs have integrated graphics, so that's where you can get at the display for that. We've got, you know, our USBs, our RJ45s for network, blah, blah, blah. You know, our mic, line out, line in, basic stuff. Wi-Fi antenna connectors. The antennas are in there somewhere. I didn't see them. Yep. So, standard. Xsetfear, welcome. Hello, hello. These are heat sinks. I know, Scobalts. It's very funny that it's called a PS2 connector. I don't actually know what PS2 stands for, but I believe that's a connector from before the PlayStation 2 existed. Like, it's an old connector. These are heat sinks for the power supplies, like the onboard power conversion, the VRM, like power management. So that keeps it from getting too heated. Obviously, this is where your CPU goes. This is where your RAM goes. Four slots. This, you don't actually have to do anything. You don't need to worry about this, but this is actually a heatsink over the chipset. So under here lives the chip that is the B650M, right? We talked about that chipset. You can see here, B650. That chipset lives under here. I think this is technically... So, very old computer terminology. There used to be a North Bridge and a South Bridge. I believe this would be what was considered South Bridge, is old motherboard terminology. North Bridge, I believe, now is actually integrated in the CPU. They were the two motherboard chips that did stuff. And we've kind of gotten away from that terminology as the CPUs manufacturers have taken a lot more control of the chipset. But like, it used to matter what motherboards you were getting because they might have better better or worse like ability to do stuff with the chipset. Like integrated graphics used to be part of what one of the bridges did. So it's like, but that's all old shit, like from back in the old days. So that's That's not really here nor there anymore. So these are your PCIe slots. PCIe stands for PCI Express. PCI, what does PCI stand for? Something PC integrated bus, maybe? I don't know. This is generally the GPU one. These are extras, because lots of stuff goes into PCIe slots, doing all kinds of different stuff. And then these two are, I assume both of them. These two are heat sinks for your NVMe drives, because they'll live under there. We'll get to that. So that's a motherboard. So let's get our CPU in there. So generally, the correct advice, the like certified way to put together a computer is to actually put it all together outside of the case and then actually be able to post outside of the case prior to putting it into the case. That's the right way. Nobody ever does that, and I'm not going to be doing it today. But I am going to get the CPU, and I'm going to get the RAM and some stuff into the motherboard before we toss it into the case. So let's get this open. Come on. Here we go. That's a CPU. It's just a little guy. Well, except fear, you are in the right place for a beginner sort of talk over, you know, how all that stuff works. You missed a lot of the beginning when I kind of talked about how best to pick things. Like how do you make sure that you have compatibility? How do you make sure stuff works together? All of that stuff. So, I mean, if you're curious, I'd encourage you to take a look back at the VOD down the line to sort of maybe get some of that. But at least as far as putting it together, you have gotten here right at the beginning. Okay. Yeah, so this is a CPU. Also their sticker. They always send you the sticker so you can actually put it on the case. I don't really do that anymore. Case styles have kind of shifted a little bit. I might put them on this one because it's actually got space for it. You know, I mean, a lot of nicer ones have like a lot of tempered glass, and so like mine doesn't really have a space to put those. So something interesting about modern CPUs. So you'll notice that this is flat on the back, right? So old CPUs used to have the pins on the CPU itself, and you would actually socket it into like teeny tiny little holes under here. So they'd go in and they'd be secured. It got to the point, however, that there were a shit ton of little guys on the back. It was also sort of at risk of getting bent. Bent pins is the death of a CPU. And so by removing them from this, there's a little bit less risk as we're, you know, moving it around and manipulating it to drop it and bend a pin. Like that was a risk. And so that is reduced now. And instead, like I mentioned, this is a land grid array, and that's because the little pins are under here, which is also why there's a little protector. Let's take a look at the appropriate steps to put this guy in there. Why do you have both the Intel and AMD sockets? This only has an AMD socket. So, like one of the funny pieces, about this, right, is that you actually leave this little protector in the whole time. You do not place it. I did put my finger on these pads, which is less than ideal. They should be fine. And you actually use the CPU's shape to pop this protector out. So actually, before I open that and leave it red. So you'll notice here on the CPU, one of the corners is marked with a little triangle. That is to guide you to what direction. You'll see there's a match. Well, you probably can't see. Hold on. You can see that there is a matching mark right there. And then if you lift this up, you will likewise see that there is a little mark up here. And so we know what direction to place it. There are also notches here and here, top and bottom. They are slightly offset so that you cannot put it in the incorrect way. It would not seat correctly. However, there have been issues of people having put it in misaligned and then forcing closed, which will definitely damage bend pins, be misaligned and misconnected. So we don't want to do that. So you line that up, you put it on in, let's see here. Place it down. That pops right off. You force that down, and it puts a lot of pressure on it. There is a lot of pressure down on this guy. You know what? I did not actually bring cleaning stuff for the top of that, which I should, since I've been handling it. So that's the CPU in. I will deal with that in a minute, actually, once I get the cooling tower to put it on. So yeah, that's in there. I'm just taking a quick look at the motherboard. There's apparently the antennas, cables. I need those. What is this? It's just a little square. Whatever. There's several tiny squares of nonsense. Okay. You in? Next up, RAM. Hey, get out of here. Okay, come on. Release. Unhand. There we go. Tidy up the workspace here a little bit. Everybody's got to go. Okie doke. Now, you can see, I mentioned earlier, we have our little notches. These move around. Not, I say move around. They have been moved each generation of DDR3 or DDR. So, like, you don't put them in the wrong slot. These are 288-pin DDR5. They only go in one way because they would be off kilter otherwise. They're really close to the middle, but that they are not quite the middle. So they have little wingalings that secure and get pulled out, so you don't have to, you know, that's how they get held in. So when you are placing DDR in, we have 4 slots and only 2 sticks, right? So there is a correct and an incorrect place to put these. One annoyance is that modern motherboards do not come with an actual legitimate guide anymore. Does this mention the RAM? Because it used to talk more about a lot of the other stuff. Like, I mean, we got power, we've got fan headers, and you can find PDFs online, but it's kind of an annoyance. Install memory, they don't really mention it. Why do you show it like that? That's not
likely correct. So, all right, well, I guess we're gonna sidle over here to the computer. Hold on, while I look up the guide to this. I B650 gaming XAX2 XE2 manual. So, what I'm getting at is you do have to actually put these correctly. So we have 2, right? And they usually come in pairs like this because they are usually dual channel RAM, which means that 2 of them work sort of in tandem as kind of like a single RAM that you can like go back and forth with. So it increases the overall performance of the RAM than just putting them in willy-nilly so that they behave independently. So you want to make sure that you are putting them in the paired slot. The manual, English. Okay, let me see here. Wow, I think they might have gotten away from A1, A2, B1, B2. So there used to be... Well, now that makes me wonder if I need to check mine. Make sure I have mine put in right. Or maybe it's supposed to go A1, B1. CPU. Oh, CPU cooler. Here we go. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so this numbering system is insane. And is exactly why I went and checked. Okay, so from inside to outside, these are numbered A1, A2, B1, B2. That's the way these are numbered, right? Page 14. Let me go double check the diagram to ensure that that is correct. Yes, that is correct. So back to page 14. And what's crazy, right? Okay, so here is the recommended formation. If you put a single stick into these 4 slots, they recommend A2. Why A2? I don't know. But it is not on either end. It is in the middle. Here it is. So they recommend A2. Now, if you put in 2, this matches my expectations. It's A2 and B2, which back in the day, the old advice that I understood was to actually start at the outside. Start at the outside and then skip 1 and then go to the other 2. So functionally, it's the same with 2. We're going to be at the outside one and then the skip 1 and put it in the middle. So these go in and you apply a little pressure and then that will snap the little guys closed and it is now secure. Do the same for the other one. Snap close. Now it is secure. We got our little RAM guys in there. In the correct place. Which we had to look up. Which now I have the manual up though, so I can just find that out. Should I zoom in? Is this? Yeah, well, I think we can see fine enough. Okay, so those guys are in. Now what we want to do is we want to grab our cooler. Because we want to make sure... I don't think I'm going to connect the cooler just yet. But we need to make sure that... Damn, those stickers are sturdy. We want to make sure we have... the correct... Oh, that's because I cut this guy. The correct connecting infrastructure.
whatever you want to call that. Okay, there's our fan. Boy, it has been a really long time since I have used a tower cooler. Okay. I did not think I was going to need to... Alright, it does provide thermal paste. It's probably pretty mediocre thermal paste, but it is provided. It is separate, however, which I really do need to get the cleaning stuff out. Because, yeah. Yeah, so these come with a lot of stuff now, because they support a bunch of different mechanisms for connecting them. And so it's like, it's a whole thing anymore. Let's see here. AM45. Yeah, we take those off. Then we fit those guys on. And then you're good to go. Okay. This. All right, so we need these guys. We don't need this guy. That's for the Intel 11.5X and 1700. These hold on the fan. And then we're gonna need these connectors and screws. You know, it really begs the question why there is a standardized format for coolers anymore, since they don't provide a cooler with an AM5. Carlos Guerra. Yes, I actually got the right parts in the thumbnail. I did take the time. But I don't know actually why they fix like a standard type of connection anymore for the cooler, because they don't ship a cooler with these CPUs anymore. So like, why bother? Just leave it off so that I don't have to unscrew it anymore. Because now I gotta freaking unscrew this and take it off. It's just in my way. A real pain in my neck. It is at least a little bit nicer. I do like the AM4 and 5. Because they have these, like, sturdy backplate with just screw holes, it does make it very easy for the aftermarket stuff to integrate with the system. Because it used to be... So, what I was talking about there is the backplate. So this is the backplate to the CPU. It used to be the case that you'd actually have to take off the backplate, and there'd be a new backplate that would come along with coolers, and it was a whole, like, sandwich assembly that you had to deal with. It was a real pain, actually, back in the day. But fortunately, it's not really like that anymore, because the backplate for the AM5, 4 and 5 are actually pretty good. Okay, so we unscrew those, and then we put these alongside the RAM. So these go this way. This. Okay, so we through here. I think so. We have our spacer. That makes sense. That does make sense. Ah, Actually, this spacer sits directly on this conveniently. Okay, cool. What CPU? Nothing exciting. I have a Ryzen 7700X. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very basic PC. This is a PC I'm building for my parents to do parents things. So it's not going to get much like stress over watching a video on YouTube while maybe they check their finances. Like, it's nothing crazy. Honestly, the 7700X is like probably a lot more than they need, but it's going to hold them for, well, as long as no parts go wrong, probably the rest of their lives. As I had actually originally looked and planned to get a 9600 because it's just the lowest end modern AMD. I should say current gen, because 7700X still obviously modern. I was going to get the 9600, but then I found some really decent deals on a bundle for last gen parts, right? And like, perfect. It worked out great. Well, I say it worked out great. I haven't built it yet, but I anticipate it's going to work out great. Rather than trying to get the newest stuff at a premium, we've just got last gen's totally decent stuff to get them by. This feel well seated. I guess, okay. This side feels much more naturally connected. This side feels better lined up than the other. So something to keep in mind when you are tightening a cooler. This one's maybe not too bad. Something to keep in mind is you actually want to tighten them not dissimilarly to how you would tighten the lugs on a car wheel, which, granted, I understand a lot of people might not have experience with that too. What I mean by that is you don't want to tighten one very heavily and then move to the next. You want to get all of them mostly tight and then kind of go around, because you want the pressure to be even when it's eventually onto the CPU. Because if you tighten like one side hard and then this side and then like you go to the other, you could end up with it tilted so that all of the pressure and cooling is happening on one side of the CPU and the other doesn't have as good connection to the cooler. So you want to make sure that you're trying to tighten these down evenly. And you don't have to worry like, oh, so much. It's not like it's... Why is this so... I don't like that. It's not like it's something that's super easy to screw up, but if you're not paying attention at all to how you're tightening, you might just sort of default to screwing one in all the way and then moving on. And you want to be at least just a little mindful that you're not doing that. And like that's aha. That's much better. Now it's fitting correctly. All right, so we just tighten these down very lightly. I could get in there. All right, and then we can kind of put the last bit. These are not connected to each other, so it's not as tremendously problematic moving from one to the next. But just sort of keeping these even. Okay. So those are in. So we have our RAM, we have our CPU in. We do not have a GPU, so we don't have to worry about that. We should do the drive. Let me put this to the side. We'll get back to those. So NVMe drives are a funny little connection, which always kind of feels weird to put in. I liked the old SATA style myself. I felt like, I don't know, those were much more straightforward and harder to feel like you've screwed it up. NVMe is undeniably a better connection type, much more effective, fast, performant, whatever you want to call it. But it feels weird to put it in, is all I'm getting at. Okay, honestly, I feel like I got a pretty damn good bargain on this motherboard. This is a pretty good motherboard, and I feel like I did not pay very much for it. Okay, so the thing about NVMe SSDs, they get pretty warm. And so a lot of good motherboards have heat sinks for them. This is just a heat sink. It'll draw the heat off. On the back, we have a thermal pad, which is currently covered in a piece of plastic. 180. Well, I got it as a bundle. And so I got this motherboard, the 7700X, and 32 gigs of RAM, all for $400. So, like, that's a pretty good price for essentially a PC at that point. Like, that I felt pretty good about that. I mean, I think overall it was saving like $150 over what they, like, the MSRP would have been. But yeah, like I felt like I had gotten, yeah, Micro Center, you got it. I came out pretty well from that. So anyway, so this is a heat sink. It's got a little thermal pad to keep connection. I'll peel that off here in a minute. Oh, it does provide the screw in here. That's what I heard rattling around. I'm trying to carefully open this so as not to fling that screw that I just mentioned, because I feel like if I open that, there we go. Okay. So this is a modern solid state drive. They are teeny tiny. I mean, I don't know if any of you are old enough to be around for like the era of the hard drive, the actual HDD hard disk drive. Those were a lot bigger than this, and they sucked. They were really shitty. But man, we sure have come a long way. So yeah, that's an NVMe M.2, whatever you want to call it, style drive. Teeny tiny, whole terabyte stored on there. And so here's the connection for it. Let me pick this up because it's teeny tiny and hard to see. So this is where that connects. And it feels kind of weird to connect to one of these because they don't actually go in straight. They actually come in slanted, and then you press them down into place. Let me try to get that into place so that you can see it. The degree to which they are sort of in at an angle is always the main question, which is why they always feel weird. There we go. Okay, so here. You can see how it's just like sticking off the motherboard. It's just popping out. And so that's kind of the weirdness that is these guys. So now that it's in there, I press it down, and they usually come with a teeny tiny screw, which honestly I may need a smaller screwdriver for. We'll see if we can get it by. This is one of the reasons that you kind of want a magnetic screwdriver for these sorts of things. And then you just screw it on in. Ta-da. All right, NVMe in. So now we're going to take our heatsink. Yeah, it goes that way. And then we're going to peel off the plastic. Don't leave plastic on your thermal pads. You, one, will not get good performance out of them, and two, you'll look like a dummy. Nobody wants to look like a dummy. You're like, gee, why is my drive so hot? It seems to just have terrible performance. And then you like take it somewhere to get looked at, like Micro Center. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's because this plastic's on here. And you're like, well, I feel sheepish. Well, you say expensive. Honestly, the prices of motherboards have been going up a lot, honestly. Once you start getting the tool list, you're really working in the sort of 350 degree. Well, especially because it's a B650, like, I feel like you don't really get moving into the tool list and stuff until you hit, like, the 670s or the 870Es or the 670Es for the high-end chipset stuff. And that shit's a lot more expensive. Because, like, what I've got in my PC, I'm pretty sure was largely toolless. And that one was an 870E, right? But that cost $500 instead of, I don't know, 200-ish, right? So it's like that. The price of motherboards is too damn high. 500 is honestly more than anybody should really spend on a motherboard, is what it comes down to. You don't get more performance for having spent $300 more on a motherboard. You don't. It's not performance. It's convenience features, honestly, prestige sort of stuff. All the things that are like intangibles that you just kind of make you feel good. Okay. Now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get this bad boy into a case. My personal build honestly was not, well, it's weird to price because it's incomplete. So a couple months ago, I had my motherboard fail. And so I had to make some changes so that it would work. But I didn't change everything. Really, I changed everything except for the GPU, which obviously is like the most expensive thing. So that's a huge cost that I have not yet spent. But I kept my old case. Originally, when I was planning on building a new PC this year, I was going to get a new case, but this sort of accelerated things more than I had anticipated. So I didn't get a new case. I use a Lianli O11D last generation, not the newest O11Ts. A wonderful case. Those things are awesome. They're beautiful, super well constructed. So I don't feel too bad about continuing to use it. But I did want a new one. So I kept that. And then I'm still using my old GPU. But what I did get was I got a, the new motherboard, obviously, because the old one failed. The new motherboard was $500. The new RAM, which I only got 64 gigs of instead of the 128 that I was planning on originally. I mean, that was a couple $100. I got an AMD 9900X 3D. I was going to get a 9950X 3D, but it was sold out at the time, and I didn't have time to wait because obviously my PC wasn't working. So I went with the 9900X 3D. And then in the process, I had updated my power supply because I was trying to troubleshoot before I exchanged the motherboard because I was hoping that it was just a power delivery issue, which it was not. And so now I've got a 1200, a C1200 from NZXT, all told. So maintaining the GPU and the case, the new build that I'm running right now was about $1,800 with no new case, no new GPU, which is expensive, but honestly could have been a lot, well, will be much worse whenever I get around to buying an actual GPU. Like, that's really the main thing is, well, the GPU is still old. It's a 3080, so. All right, let's stash some of these guys, stash these in there. Here, you can even hold this for me. And I don't go in there. Okay. Let's get you in here for the moment. I'll just stash you in there. What? Okay. Case time. Opa. All right, before we get the motherboard in here, actually, we're gonna need to get the power supply in, is where we're at. Let's get both of the panels off. All right, Case, you're taking up a lot of space here. Get out of the camera. All right, we do have a few zip ties to organize. Here we have our standoffs and some thumb screws. Probably the screw. What is the difference between these two screws? I think this has the screws for the power supply. All right. Down here, this is where the power supply lives. You can tell because it's got this little square opening. That's where the back of the power supply goes. And that's... So, I was talking about earlier, right? Compatibility. Welcome back, XSetFear. I was talking about compatibility, right? And so this is an ATX case. This is an ATX power supply. We have an ATX motherboard. Now, the reason that this and the case matter for ATX, aside from the standoffs for the motherboard and fitting the motherboard in here, this has particular positions for screws on the back of it. And we want to make sure that the screws are in the right place in the case. The power supply, this power supply is an HX850i. So this is a 850 watt power supply. So when placing your power supply into your case, you have essentially two choices. A fan side and a flat not fan side. There is a correct answer. Well, with some minor caveats potentially, the correct answer is that the fan should be facing the bottom of the case because the case has mesh to allow airflow to the power supply. So you want to line that up. Okay, all right, yes. So why it's an 850? Excellent point, Carlos. This is an 850 because it was my old power supply. This was the power supply that was in my system before I put the 1200 in when I was trying to troubleshoot whether the power supply was the problem with my PC. It turned out to not be. The motherboard was shitty. So I still have this. I didn't like take out the other power supply because, oh my God, that's so much work. So this is my old one. So this is a hand-me-down. Slash, sold at a used price to the parents. So that's where we're at here. On the other side of the power supply is all of these connectors. So power supplies, especially at the low end. This is not a low end, but this is overall a relatively tame low-end PC build in general. And if normally, if you were building for this sort of PC, you might end up with what's called a non-modular power supply. A non-modular power supply has all of the cables permanently affixed, coming out in like one bundle off the side, and then you just kind of have to fish around with them. This, on the other hand, is a fully modular power supply, in that each one of the potential cables necessary has a connector on this, so any not in use can be removed. You don't need to have a bunch of spare cables floating around in your case when you don't need to. Modular power supplies are wonderful, and I personally think they're worth the extra few bucks to get them in there, especially if you're working with a smaller case, like that you just don't have a lot of free space to just have spare cables floating around. Modular power supplies really help with, reducing clutter. So that's what this is. So let's get this guy in here. Let me turn this towards me. Let me get the appropriate screws. I don't know what these little guys are. This came with some extra little weird stamped metal guys. I don't know what those are for the case. What is this? Ah, I know what this is. This is a standoff screw. Those are very helpful. many of these do I need? 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like it. Maybe that size? I really do hate when they put them all into the same bag, and you're like fishing through screws to try to find the right size. We got some thumb screws in here. I don't know what those thumb screws are for. So, you know what? Fun fact about microwaves. This is freaking rubbing off the black on my finger. That's not ideal. Hey, this CPU I think is 145. So 900 is pretty typical for a microwave wattage, actually. I have the most insanely old microwave. It's like upwards of 20 years old at this point. And I hope it never dies, because they don't make microwaves like they used to. My microwave is 1500 watts. And fun fact about 1500 watts. So 1500 watts is actually a very relevant number for the electrical system. 1500 watts is, in the US, where I reside, 1500 watts is the highest wattage that a consumer product can be if it is something that like runs for any kind of period of time. 1500 watts is like the highest consistent power draw for a single consumer good. Which is why if you look at the wattage for almost any space heater, most space heaters are 1500 watts because that's as high as they can go. And I happen to have a 1500 watt microwave, and I hope to God it doesn't die. I will never be able to replace it. All right, I think I got all the screws I need. I'm gonna keep that over there. Okay, I'm afraid this is gonna tip off the edge. I'm trying to get it into camera. Okay, so fan side down. Sit it on down there. Fit it in there. There's my screwdriver. There it is. And then we have, I'm pretty sure these are the right screws. These are usually the shape the screws for power supplies are. I don't know, that feels a little firm. I want to go stripping the screw holes. So one of the biggest annoyances I have with power supplies is they all have this damn mesh on the back, which is almost exactly the same damn size as the screw holes. And it's real damn easy to cram a screw into the mesh. I don't know, that screw feels a little firm. What do we think the most common mistake in PC building? That is a interesting question. I would bet that... Ooh, that feels way more correct. I think a lot of the issue comes at the very beginning, because at least for first-time builders, I think it's really easy for someone like that to end up making mistakes in the parting process. Of like not the right socket for the CPU, not understanding what degree of power supply they need, that sort of thing, not getting the right RAM. Especially when there are generational transitions, right? So like when we were moving from
AM4 to AM5, and we had both DDR4 and DDR5 memories on the market simultaneously, I think it would be really easy for someone new to end up, especially someone new and price conscious, right? Because they'll be looking through the parts list and see DDR, and they're like, oh, this one's like $80 less than this other one. I mean, I don't have the money. I'm like, that seems great, right? It's like, that feels like one of the most common mistakes to me. Once you get past that point, I'm not too sure. Well, as far as little mistakes, right, I think it's pretty common for people who don't know that they have to pay attention to it to use the incorrect I can't freaking see over here. To use the wrong this shitty light. There we go. The wrong two RAM slots, right? Because, when you only use 2 and not 4, there are the recommended slots for you to use. And I think new folks simply do not know that they're supposed to pay attention to that. You know what? This might be easier if I stand this up. So I would wager that's another really common one. And the thing about that one, especially, is that one's a pretty nefarious one. Simply because your PC, you can't even see my hands as I'm gesturing. Your PC will work, right? If you put your RAM in the wrong 2 slots, the PC will work. It will just simply not be as performant. So, like, I think that's a lot of the mistakes that come up for new folks is not necessarily mistakes that break the PC. Because while you may have to struggle with a few of those, right? It's like, why won't this post? I made mistakes. I gotta fix them. At least with those mistakes, they're kind of self-correcting, right? When you don't post, well, now you gotta do something about it, right? Like, you have to figure your shit out. But with those little things where you've simply, like, made little mistakes, maybe you didn't get a cooler with enough cooling capacity, maybe your thermal paste is on incorrectly, like, stuff like that ends up degrading the performance in little ways. You just, if you're new, you may never know that you did that. You may not know how to go check. And it's just like, there's a lot of potential for frustration in that regard. And I think those are the most troublesome mistakes for new folks. Which is why I've been trying to sort of comment about all of those sorts of mistakes as I've been going through this to try to help people get, avoid catching those. All right, can you remove yourself from my way? Thank you. Okay, time to get standoff. Where did I put that bag of standoffs? A couple of the standoffs are already in here. We got one here. Oh, that's a non-screw standoff. They do that sometimes. I don't really know why. Here, these are labeled like A and M. M presumably being micro, A being ATX. I don't really have all of the standoff positions for ATX memorized. I don't do this frequently enough, but it looks like they're labeled. Oh, this over here? So this is an old style, because this case is cheap. So, for one, this over here is for SATA-style drives. These are trays for SATA SSDs. And what's really funny is this one up here, this actually has a spot for 5.25 millimeter optical drives. This is where you could put a freaking DVD-ROM or reader or writer, like the old style. Like it's got the classic front cutouts for optical drive bays. Like you don't see that ever anymore, but they're here because it was cheap, and also it didn't have RGB. Like I was trying to avoid that for my parents. Okie doke. Let's talk standoffs. So all of these little screw holes in here, these are for standoffs. Now, what are standoffs? Standoffs are little guys like this. Essentially, they are both a male and female screw extender, essentially. So these go into the case in a particular format for your form factor of motherboard. And it is so that you can screw in the motherboard. And that's where all these little screw holes are. So why do we need standoffs, though? So on the back of a motherboard, all of these little, like, through lines through the PCB, you can see that they're actually bumped up. Like, especially down here, you can see all of these. These are, like, protruding. Could you send a PC part? I'm not really... I don't know. I'm not really in the business of kind of validating PC parts at the moment. This is actually the first time I've streamed to do a PC build. It's not my typical content, but I had been wanting to do a tutorial, and I had the opportunity to do this one for parents. Maybe down the line, if I keep getting opportunities to build PCs, I don't know. If this stream goes off, who knows? Okay. So, right on the back, we have protruding metal pieces. The case, also notably metal. So we need to be able to put this motherboard into this case without all of these little protruding metal contacts coming into contact with the case, because that is a short and will absolutely ruin your day. And it will ruin your motherboard. And so standoffs allow us to stand off the motherboard from the case high enough that those are not touching. However, it is also relevant that these are metal, because the standoffs and the screw holes, they do intentionally electrically connect the case to the motherboard, but in a controlled fashion so that it's a shared ground. It's much the same as the chassis of a automobile, a car. You connect directly to the negative terminal of your car battery so that it shares a ground. And you do exactly the same thing with a PC. You just don't realize it potentially because it's done with the screws and the standoffs to the case. So everything shares a shared electrical ground. So that's standoff. Standoffs are little hexagonal, and it used to be that you'd have to make sure you had a little hex driver to get these in, but a lot of motherboards now conveniently send you these little caps that have a Phillips head on top so that you can then screw them in with just a screwdriver. So we're just going to go through. Come back here, you escape artist. Maybe I'll just put them in with a bink real quick and get started from there. Oh boy. Here's where you really get the difference between a nice case and a cheap case, because these standoffs either screw in real smooth or a little bit choppy. Right? Really seeing the limitations of my lighting solution right now, because it's kind of hard to see in here. But that's
what I've got. So I must persist.
What GPU? So at the moment, I don't have a GPU to go in this on hand. It's actually going to be getting a second-hand, third-hand GeForce GTX 1080. It used to be my card years and years ago, and then I sold it on the cheaps to my sister Kappa, who still has it in a closet after I had then subsequently sold her a newer, but still second-hand GPU for me, and she's using that now. So we're gonna reclaim this 1080 to go into here for the parents to, you know, reduce cost. Because honestly, when I had originally been looking, when I had forgotten that we had a GTX 1080 floating off, I had I was looking at the an ARC card, just like an Intel B580, just because they're like the lowest cost cards you can get right now that like aren't garbage. But not having to buy a new GPU is generally better for some folks who are simply never ever going to even approach playing a game or anything. Like, the hardest thing the GPU's got to do is render YouTube videos, you know? So there's just no reason to go harder. Oh, I was like, did you short me a single standoff? No, I found it. Although I actually need 2 more standoffs, I realize. Do I have one in an incorrect spot, perhaps? I hope not. No, those are all labeled both A and M. Well, am I going to have to fish out an extra standoff? Though it will be generally fine down at standoff. I really want that. Drop one per chance. Oh no, here it is. I found it. Problem solved. All right. They are all now in position, but extremely loosely tightened. So now we got to go through and tighten down all our standoffs. You don't want to tighten these too terribly hard. You want them to be firm, but you don't want to like go crazy with it. That's kind of true for everything with a PC. Anything that's being screwed in, don't go wild. Just get it nice finger tight. You don't need a torque wrench to be applying a particular amount of pressure. Just get it firm, and then, you know, you'll be all right. You don't have to go too hard further. Especially true for the screws that are going into the motherboard itself. You don't want to be wrenching it so hard that you're actually splintering the PCB. PCB is the acronym for the printed circuit board, by the by. I've said that a couple times, but that's what PCB stands for. Printed circuit board. Hey. Oh, hey. Magnet held on to that one. What's this one? No. Okay. Firm. Oh, these are probably the motherboard screws. That's probably why they were on their own, separate. Am I gonna get these out, be able to get these out if the motherboard is there? I don't know. Let's find out. You know what? I just thought of a potential most common mistake, because it's the most common mistake I make. So in this case, I'm not going to be able to do it because this motherboard prevents me from doing it. But if you have a lower, cheaper end motherboard, this piece, the cover to the I/O panel, may be a separate stamped metal piece that is not already integrated to the I/O panel, don't forget to put that on. Like, you want to make sure that you fit that onto the motherboard or into the opening at the back here. This guy here, you want to fit that in so that it's actually covering the I/O panel. That's probably the thing that I most commonly do. In which case, you have to unscrew the motherboard, reposition it, get the stupid thing on, and then go from there. It's a real pain when you do that. So don't do that. Make sure you don't do that. Ah, there we go. All right, let's get this bad boy screwed in. I'm realizing that this is going to be an enormous pain in my ass. This space is small. This is a very small space and is going to be a huge pain in my ass to get all of the cables plugged in. Well, we'll see how that goes. Do you need specific screwdrivers for PC building? No, you do not. This is just a cheap-ass screwdriver that came with, I don't know, some peripheral that I got that's like, oh, you need a screwdriver. So it's just a regular, standard-size Phillips head screwdriver. Almost every screw in a PC is a Phillips head like this size. They may be this size, they may be ever so slightly smaller, so it can be useful to have a smaller one if you need for teeny tiny ones. A lot of times the ones that screw down the M.2s can be pretty fiddly little guys. So like those are really the only two you need. It's very straightforward. There are like whole kits that you can get, but like I've never had a full need. Fortunately, like if you're getting new parts, like a new case comes with a little bag of all of the screws you need. The screws are pretty standardized, so you can get like screw kits if you like need to replace some. And they're like iFixit kits, which are pretty common for folks to get that have, you know, the various screwdrivers that you'll need for fixing a lot of stuff, honestly, like smartphones, even taking off like screen panels and all the little bits and stuff you might need for that. But for like building a PC is really actually quite beginner friendly. Like it doesn't need a bunch of complicated parts. It's down to a science. As long as the components themselves are correctly matching, you end up with like all of the stuff you need with the addition of just a basic screwdriver and like a knife to open your boxes. Like that's the tools I have on hand. There are a couple things that I'm gonna have to go grab in a minute, which you'll see, but like that's for the more complicated case in that these guys sort of cheaped out and didn't pre-apply the thermal paste, so I'm gonna have to do that myself. But you know, such is life. I usually use apply my own thermal paste anyway, so it's not really a big deal. All right, let's get all this bad boy screwed in. Yeah, these are really the ones that you want to make sure you're not screwing in too tightly. I knew this cable was going to be a freaking problem. Ooh. That lines up better. Just a little askance. That's looking much better. Yeah, you really don't want to over tighten these. What's this like free? Did I? Okay, well.
That feels like cheap case problems right there. I may have stripped the standoff. Because that one feels like it is free spinning now. What is that? What's happening? Are these the right screws? Or have I just not screwed them in all the way? That doesn't feel good. Why are you like that? I don't know why that is happening. Nor am I pleased that it is. It shouldn't be a huge crisis. Oh, you know what? The one thing I will mention about a screwdriver, the one thing that you do want in your PC building screwdriver is you do want a magnetic tip. Because you can see how like awkward it might be to try to get these screws into position, and having a magnetic tip is tremendously helpful in being able to stick it on and then get it into position at the end of the screwdriver. So that's what I'll say. Get yourself a little magnetic tip. But other than that, you can get by with just a Phillips head. It's just going to be a lot more work. That's the one thing. It'll be a lot harder. Do not like the way these screws go into these standoffs. That feels pretty terrible. I kind of blame the cheap case. So the issue I'm feeling with that, so I've been talking about that. The issue I'm getting is that it feels like it firms up, but then if you try to torque it just a tweak more, it feels like it's stripping the standoffs, so that then it just starts free spinning, which feels pretty shitty. Like it seems like it's still tight in there. That one feels a little loose. Like I don't know if the standoff itself is spinning. Touch the standoff there. No, the standoff itself is not spinning. It has stripped the top of the standoff. Damn you, cheap ass standoffs. That still feels secure. Should still be doing the job. Okay. I believe that's all the standoffs. 1, 2, 3. That's all the standoffs. Okay. Now I'm going to throw up the BRB screen. Am I going to install fans? So there are actually 2 pre-installed fans up here, and then I have the fan for the CPU cooler. And so that I'm not going to be adding any additional fans because I don't expect this system to produce a lot of heat. I think that these 2 intake fans on the front with the one cooler up here should be sufficient. But I'm going to put up the BRB screen because I do need to go get another piece of equipment. I need to go get some cleaner and stuff for applying the thermal paste. So I will be right back as I go grab that. And then it will be but a moment. I have everything I need. I just got to go wandering off to get it. All right, hold on one second. All right. You are in fact correct. That screen had not been updated in some time. Okay, so what did I need to go and fetch? What I needed, let me make sure the cap is secured. Isopropyl alcohol. The higher the better. Over 90%, I think should be fine. But like 91, 95, 97. Isopropyl alcohol is component cleaner because it evaporates entirely. So isopropyl alcohol. And then the cheat code. Coffee filters. So why coffee filters? So you need a lint-free cloth to clean computer components. Lint-free cloths can be expensive or hard to obtain. You know what's not? Coffee filters. They are the cheapest, most accessible lint-free fabric you can get your hands on. So these are the cheat code for cleaning. You just, cause like when I just kind of like fold them into a little like triangle, and then I got a little cleaner guy, and I'll just clean that shit up. Okay. All right, let me see here. So we've got this guy. This is our cooling tower. Is that intentional? Well, it doesn't look intentional, but both of these sides are wanged. I don't know about that. I mean, it kind of looks intentional, but this side's not like that. Pressure get applied to those? Hopefully that's not going to disrupt its ability to function. Or more specifically, hold the damn fan in place. Let's see. We still have the guide. The case. Oh. Went into this box. Let me see here. It did not go. Did it go into this box? Boxes galore. There we go. That's what I want. What the hell is that thing? This guy? Is that what you're asking? So this is what's called a tower cooler or an air cooling solution. So this is essentially like a radiator, except it's not like, it doesn't have liquid running through it. This is a PC cooler for use of air instead of like water cooling. This fan over here will affix directly to one of the sides so that it draws air through or pushes air through. And like that's how you cool the CPU. Yeah, I haven't used air coolers in quite some time. Like, all-in-ones are just kind of objectively better, aside from the fact that they cost a little bit more, is really it. And, like, for a build like this, where there's just not going to be much heat produced, I just didn't see a need to put an all-in-one in. Oh, how to set fans to exhaust. Okay. So, let me see if they show. So the thing about fans is that, generally speaking, fans do not have a direct like ability to run forwards or backwards. Like, these are a unidirectional fan. Air is going to get drawn in one side and forced out the other. Let me see if it actually mentions which is which on this. There's usually sort of a reliable way to tell, but it's usually indicated on the fan packaging specifically. Nicer fans will have an arrow on them to show you which direction they go. This is so not English. This is English. Let's install a heatsink with a screwdriver, install fans on heatsink clips. So the general rule of thumb, and it looks like those fans are this way and this way. So generally, the general rule of thumb is this side that doesn't have stuff on it. This is the intake side. And then this side that has like the brackets and stuff is the exhaust side. So air will go in from this way and come out this way. And that's generally true. I'm looking at those and it looks to be true for those. That's true for the fans in my own case. Like that's generally the way it is. Sometimes they have an arrow on the side to like point which way they go, but this kind of doesn't, unless that's very vaguely it. Oh, it's tiny. It's microscopic. It also doesn't appear to have an arrowhead. It's just a tiny rectangle. So I don't know. But generally it's this way. So like, if it's facing this side in, it's exhaust. So like you see here, these two at the front, you can see has the like the brackets pieces. This side, this is an intake. It's coming this way. Up here is kind of where you'd typically put an exhaust. It would look like this if it is an exhaust. So like, see how this one doesn't have anything covering it? Like this would be an exhaust fan. It would look more like this. You see the bar, like the support bars for the fan hub. It would look like this. This is an intake. This would be forcing air that way. If it looks like this, right? Like if that's the side that you see, that's forcing air that way. Or like similarly on top, right? Top's a common place to exhaust. Like this would be an exhaust on the top. If it has an arrow on it, the arrow is usually pointing in the direction of airflow. So if you're trying to set up an exhaust fan, you want the arrow to be pointing out of the case. Get in there. Or be flopping about. Okay. Let's do some cleaning. That's it. That's it. I mean, that of course means that you have to like, if you want to flip it around, it means that you do have to unscrew it from the case, flip it around, and then put it back on, which of course is an inconvenience. But yeah, that's it. I suppose it helps that it's simple and that it's sort of simple to understand, but it doesn't have the complexity to like let you change it on the fly. I've always felt like it's counterintuitive. I always feel like the fans feel more natural to me with the airflow going in the opposite direction that they typically do. Like I think Scobolts might have said it earlier too. Like I would assume the nicer looking side will be intake. See, I always kind of assumed that the nicer side would be where the air flowed to. Like, I don't know, that was just like what came to my mind. I could be like, obviously I'm generally wrong. I don't know the logic behind the selection at all. Like, I don't know why it is the way it is. But like that's the way it is. Okay, so we have wiped off our CPU surface with our isopropyl alcohol. And so now we're gonna take this. This is a thermal paste. Let's talk about thermal paste, yeah? So anywhere you're trying to move
heat, you need some kind of thermal transition material. Remind me later, and I can grab it and send you. I don't know what you want that clip for, but sure. So the thermal paste, or, thermal material in general, is used anywhere where we're trying to move heat from one, piece of metal to another piece of metal, or one component to anything else. You remember I was talking about under here, right? Our heat sink, how we had a thermal pad. Which transitions the heat from the SSD into this thermal heatsink, the heatsink, right? Anywhere, in GPUs, there's going to be thermal compounds between all over the place. There's likely some thermal pads between these thermal and these. So we need some kind of thermal transition material. There are there are a variety of types of thermal compound. There's thermal paste, there's thermal pads, there's newer, fancier stuff. I have a thermal sheet on mine. There's ceramics type. You can even get liquid metal. There's a wide variety, and honestly, with most coolers you get, they will come pre-applied. If you spend a little bit of money, if it's even at all a mid-tier to premium cooler solution, it's got it pre-applied. I usually take that off and use a higher end sort, but you don't have to. It works fine. The basic choice is a non-conductive thermal paste. That's what this is. It's generally like a liquid. It comes in these tubes. You'll just spray it on, and it'll get the job done. You want non-conductive, because if you get a conductive, so like a liquid metal, it's fine here, right? But if you overdo it and it squeezes out, you can short contacts. No beginner should use a conductive liquid metal style thermal compound. I don't even work with liquid metal. They're not worth it. They might work better when you're at the extreme levels of extreme overclocking, like competition style, where you're trying to run liquid nitrogen onto the CPU to overclock it to high heaven. But if you're doing that, you're not here watching this build. This is not where you're at. So, yeah. So just get, there's lots of varieties. Just either use what's on the cooler or do a little bit of research. There's lots of guides on them, but a little thermal compound, a thermal paste, will get the job done. So that's exactly where we're going to put on here. There's not really a right way necessarily to apply thermal paste. You don't need a lot, okay? You don't need much. It used to be, I'm trying to figure out how much pressure. Honestly, that's probably enough for the entire thing. The one thing that you can know, there's some discussion around should you be using some kind of a spreading tool to spread it across manually? Should you put one dot in the middle? You can see I've put 5 dots sort of around. I think that's going to work just fine. So you don't need much, because it's going to get compressed into a teeny tiny line. I've put 5 dots around to try to get good equal coverage. And then once I put the heatsink on, it's going to spread it from the pressure of screwing it down. This is probably more than needed. That's the one thing, though. As long as it's non-conductive, you can apply extra. Having too much thermal paste that's non-conductive Not going to cause you any harm. It's just going to get squeezed out the edges. It might be a little bit of a mess to clean up if you ever take that off and want to replace it. But, like, that's it. That's the only thing that's going to happen. Does thermal paste quality matter that much? Not really. There are a lot of differences in quality. Some pastes optimize for performance. Some pastes might be optimizing for longevity. Because pastes will dry out over time, and so some pastes you really should take the cooler off, clean it up, and reapply like yearly or bi-yearly. Like, some of them are going to get you like 1 or 2 degree better performance than another will. But I doubt that there is a thermal paste on the market that's just not going to work. Even the $2 one. The worst that's probably going to happen out of the $2 one is that it'll dry up over time, maybe quicker, and maybe you'll see your temps rising, you know, year over year, and then you could go in and you could take off the cooler, clean it off with the isopropyl alcohol, right? And then reapply a new set. Like, that's pretty much all that's going to come out of that. Okay. Here we have another plastic sheet on the bottom of the cooler. Again, we don't want to be the dummy that leaves that on. It's going to be bad. So then we're going to sit this on here. Here's where we want to make sure that we get this on straight, because we don't want to, like, smear off all of the compound. Get it? I think I got it. Okay. And here, especially as I was mentioning, we want to make sure we get it like finger tight on both sides, and then we apply equal pressure as we sort of finalize the screwing in. Did I get this in place? I sure didn't. That was just the suction from the thermal paste. I think I still had it in the right place. I think I just have to actually like push this spring down in order to get it to engage with the thread. I think that side's engaged. Is this side engaged? Doesn't feel like it. Slide up a little bit. Nope, still no. Come on. Come on. How can I not get this engaged? What the heck? Okay, now we're engaged on it. And is this side still engaged? Does it feel like it's getting tighter? I think so. That feels like we're tightening. Okay, all right, we got it on. Okay. Okay. That feels like it's all tight. And this one is there too. Okay. Now that this is in, let's sort of talk about
what makes this like a lower cost air cooler and what makes a nicer cooler, right? So one of the main things is, so here, right, you saw I screwed in the 2 screws. 2 points of contact isn't the best because we have 1 band of pressure directly across the middle, which is likely going to leave these sides with less clean pressure to transfer the heat. So it's not going to work as well. I think it is still 28 on the PSU, but it's usually... Hold on, you got the question. On the other side... Because, like, it's usually... You know, some... Are these different size? They might be. No, those look like they look equivalent. Because it used to be, I think, that they were like 24 pins, and then they added. Yeah, you can see there's a little 4-pin addition at the end because like there's a cut here, so that it could be 24 or it could be 28, and then this is split into 2 because it goes into the modular like that. Alright, I want to get this guy out of here. Okay. Coolers. So this only has the 2 screws, which leaves 1 band of pressure to get the heat. And so these sides are going to be a little less, like, applied to the CPU, which means they'll transfer heat a little bit worse. So, like, a nicer cooler will have, like, 4 connectors, so that it's kind of getting cross pressure, not just a single band of pressure. So that's one thing. The number of cooling pipes, I think this has 4. It does have 4. 4. You might see nicer ones that have like 6, as well as the size of the radiator, right? That kind of all contributes to how much heat it can actually dissipate, as well as how many fans go on it. Because this just comes with 1. Technically, I could put 1 on the other end, perhaps. But we should actually probably get this guy in there. How does this actually hang on to this? Did I cut my thumb? I don't think so. These radiator fins can be really sharp, though. That's something that new builders might also do, is just cut the shit out of their fingers on these radiators. Okay, so they are suggesting that these go... These go into... So I want this to go this way, right? Because I want it to pull air through this, and then I want it to exhaust it directly out of the PC. So that's... I'm going to fix this way. And it goes... I want this towards the bottom. These guys go there. Go there. And like that. That seems to be correct. Okie doke. Fan in place. So now it should draw from this way into the radiator and then out of the PC for optimal cooling with our one lonely fan back here. That's the plan. So now let's see. Something I have not checked is we gotta find the CPU fan. There it is. Plug this guy.
So these guys, which you probably cannot see at all, so these connectors for the fans, they're 4-pin connectors, and they have little fins on the top, which kind of catch into tabs. That was my eyeballs. Tabs on the sockets for these. The CPU fan label, or the fan connectors are labeled. There's like CPU optional, CPU fan, system fan 1. There's system fan 2. There's system fan 3 down here. And so these will socket in sort of the one way they make sense, with those fins fitting between, or rather fitting the tab between the fin. So that's now in the CPU fan. The only relevant piece of like which fan connector do these go in? CPU fan should go into the CPU fan, obviously, but that's usually where like warnings and things are connected to. So you need to make sure that the CPU fan is occupied and has the fan for it, because left to its own devices, it's going to use the CPU's temperature to control the CPU fan. So temperature go up, fan go hard. Like that's the connection between those two things. And so you want to make sure that the CPU fan is connected to the CPU fan header, because that's the relationship you want. You want this to get stronger when this gets toasty, because then it'll cool it down and you'll be hunky-dory. If you put it in somewhere else, it's not going to have that same relationship. And also, it'll probably complain at you because it's like, hey, the CPU fan is running at 0 RPM. I'm on fire. And it might not even boot properly. So that's something you want to make sure. You make sure that's in the right one. So at this point, I think we're going to have to start getting our power supply cables in. I don't need this knife anymore. We're not busting anything open. We've done that already. The isopropyl should be all settled and done as well. All right, let's do this inconvenience of cabling the power. Fortunately, we don't actually have a whole lot of things that are going to need the power, so that's nice. Although eventually we will need... trying to think of how many PCI power connectors are on my 1080. It might be only 1. It might be 2. But honestly, I will worry about it later. Let's get the power in place. Okay, so we need our 24-pin motherboard ATX connector, 2428. As I should have. Is this a CPU? Yes. So then there's an 8-pin. I assume it's an 8-pin on this as well. Damn! It's 8-pin, and then also the extra 4-pin extra guy? I'm surprised that this motherboard would need that. Is this the other CPU? It is. We got 2 CPUs. Hey, thanks for stopping by, XF here. I appreciate you coming to hang out and chatting with me. Yeah, so we got 2 CPU. They go up there. You can see the connectors right there. We need 8 plus 4. So this will be our plus 4 because this one's already disconnected. And this will be our 8. And that's actually going to power everything that's currently in the PC. We don't have anything that's running on a SATA power. These should be drawing their power from the fan headers. It used to be that you had to connect fans via Molex. Was 3-pin fan headers plus Molex. That was a whole thing. But no more. Okay, so let's see. There's the 4x4 CPU. There's peripheral. Where does the motherboard ATX guy go? Is it all the way under? Yeah, it is. Damn, that sucks. I don't. You know, I'm immediately regretting having gotten this case with this stupid thing. Oh my god, can this be disconnected? Oh. I thought this would have definitely been... Hey, Exile. This is a full build for my parents, is what this is. From bottom to top, putting it together for my parents. The only thing I don't have on hand right now is the GPU, but Kappa has the GPU. It's going to be my old 1080 going into this. I can't believe this is actually screwed in. I was sure that this was going to be actually riveted in. Holy shit. I can't believe... Well, one, I just dropped that screw. Where it's gone? Oh, it was in my lap. I found it. I was for sure... I only paid $65 for this case. I was 100% sure that this was going to be, like, permanently riveted in. And it's not. Thank you, Fractal Design. You have saved me so much trouble. This is the most exciting thing about this entire build, honestly. The fact that this comes off the best. And I mean, honestly, maybe it'll go back in. I think they're currently running SATA drives, and I kind of expect to put in their old drives just, you know, in case. Oh, what the damn hell? It's stuck on the back, too. All right, hold on. Lift it up. Turn it around. It's a screw here, too. Oh, you... Fractal Design, you treat me too well for $65. Honestly, I would expect this out of a more expensive case. Obviously. Like, this is not like an unusual feature. I just definitely didn't expect it for the amount I paid for this case. I'm sliding around my desktop cover. What is this? Where did this screw come from? That's disconcerting. Don't tell me. Hold on. I have an errant screw. Not of the type I just unscrewed. Not flashing. Check all our... Okay. It was not. It was not. And motherboard screw. Was it back here? Nope, those are different. Okay, I think it's fine. I don't think it was in anything. Crisis averted? Probably? Okay. Cage gone. Fantastic. That's just the best news I've had. That is going to make it far, far easier for me to get all these cables in place. Where did I put them? Did I move them back over here? Sure did. All right. So now we got to get these modular guys in there. Or an ATX goes like this. Loosen them up a little bit. Oh my god. Okay. So when putting in cables into your modular power supply, you always want to make sure that the little tab connectors, like the
the securing tabs are nice and locked in. You make sure you have a secure connection. You don't want those loose. That is how you get fires starting. And nobody wants their PC to be on fire. That's no fun for anyone. Of note, these one you can, when you're placing these in, you can follow the tab side, because there's usually like a connecting I don't know, a little plastic tab on that side. So this is like a little grabber tab up here. See, it kind of grabs on. And this has a longer plastic little fin to be grabbed by this. So you can sort of follow that as far as like which side it goes in, but also as long as you don't force anything, these pins, I don't know if you can see, they're different shapes. Some of them have like little squared off edges. Some of them have sort of little angled off edges. So those, you can only fit these in one direction. So as long as you're being gentle with it, you know, like if it fits this way, you can sort of probe to make sure you have it the right direction. Like, make sure it fits before you apply pressure to properly seat it. And then the tab grabber grabs on. It's nice and secure. And we're good to go there. Then the next is we have our 2 CPU bit here. Oh, right. Through this screw from that. Oh, maybe I should have left it out. I mean, figure that out later. That ship has sailed. Yeah, sure. I can cover what's in here. Yeah, so this is a Thermalright Assassin 120. The CPU in here is an AMD 7700X. This is a Gigabyte B650 gaming AX XAX V2 or something. It's got a 1 terabyte Crucial solid state drive under there. This is a way larger power supply than is needed, because this was the old one from my system that had been taken out when I was trying to troubleshoot it to see if it was a power demand issue that was causing me issues. It wasn't. So I thought this power supply was bad, but it, as far as I know, is not. So here it's back. And then this is just a cheapo fractal design case. And that 2 16 gig sticks of RAM, G-Skill something or other, Flare 5, I think, 6000 megahertz. So pretty ordinary build. This would be like barely enough cooling potentially for this CPU if it were doing anything more demanding than doing parent shit, right? Like this should meet the thermal demands of general parent use of PC. Like, it's just, they're just gonna run around YouTube. It'll be fine. But if a 7700X were being used for like anything else, if it was gonna play any games at all, I would probably not recommend this cooler as a solution. I got it because it's cheap as shit. And they just aren't going to be doing very much. Same ordeal with CPU, guys. Into the back. The modular they go. This case, however, we're actually going to route these a little better. So these 2 cables, let's talk PC building etiquette. These 2 cables are going to be coming up here. This is where they go. That's the ports that they go on. Now,
you could put them here, but that's not ideal. Like, routing your cables like that, one, it disrupts your airflow, so it could lead to more thermal issues. Two, it might rub your fan, which is going to make annoying noises and possibly reduce the life of the fan. So what you really want to do is you want to route these, which is what the backside of the case is for, and what all of these, what are called pass-throughs, are designed for. So we can just run these guys through this pass-through right here at the bottom, right in front of the power supply. Just push those cables through. And then we'll do more to manage these cables later. Or honestly, I might on my own. Because stream has been going for some mysterious kind of time. Yeah, we're like 3 hours, so we're getting lengthy. So now we've got these over on this side, and we can run them up. Again, a decent case has a pass-through right here. You can't see it, but that's the perfect location to run our cables. I'm actually pretty damn impressed by this case for 65 bucks. I did not expect to have such a good time of it. The only issue I had were those standoffs that seems like they got stripped practically instantaneously with any degree of pressure whatsoever, which I didn't love. But that's kind of the only issue I've had so far. Other than that, I'm having a good time. Trying not to smash our cables over here. Okay. Which direction you want? I want that way. And the hard time of freaking squeezing these in here. Go. Okay. One. So a lot of the cables sort of come apart like this because sometimes you need a 4-pin and sometimes you need a 2-pin, right? So like these are 2 4-pins that can be fused. They have a little connector to connect them. If you only need one, usually they're going to do it. Both have. Are they different or are they the exact same? No, they are different. So only one of these should fit. And I don't know if there's actually an easy way to tell. In this case, this one has the label on it, so I'm going to take a guess that that's the one that they would by default use. And I am greeted with success. So again, I just kind of probed a little bit with light pressure to see if that was going to go in. It did. So I don't, gorilla grip your way into cramming it somewhere that it can't actually fit. So that, in this case, is pretty much all of the power delivery we need in this case. Because we don't have the GPU yet. We don't have any SATA drive to run SATA power. We have nothing that's using any more power. That's actually it. Which is insane, because this is way too big a power supply to just plug those 2 things in. But here we are. It is what it is. So with that, let's connect some of these last errant cables. So let's get our fan set up first. These are going to be our system fans. Now, once you get to system fans, it doesn't really matter which headers they go on. They're just going to kind of do their thing. You can sort of set up fan curves through a variety of applications. I don't know if this is going to have any sort of built-in way of changing that. The GPU is going to go right here. This is the port
that the GPU will go in. The GPU will go here. These little covers will come off. You see they've got thumb screws, so you'll unscrew these so that the I/O panel of the GPU will stick out the back here. It'll slide into this port here, and it'll sit, in this space. And then on the side of it's going to be another power supply port, and so we'll run a PCIe power connector from here directly into there, and then that will be useful. But we do not currently have that, so we're gonna get the other stuff. Okay. So here's again those 4-pin connectors that I mentioned that have little pins to slot. And so the only difference between any of the system fan stuff is what they're going to be labeled in any kind of fan curve software you're using, or even like probably the Gigabyte built-in utility will have something. Wow, these are only 3-pin. All right, these guys are 4-pin. These might not have like as much controllability, or rather, they might not report their RPM. Wait, need any other plug, right? The only cable I got going. So yeah, whichever system fan one they're plugged into is mostly just a matter of convenience so that you keep track of which is which. Your setting. Because maybe you want to run an exhaust fan at different speed as your intake fan, stuff like that. But those fans are connected. So now what we have are these cables. So these are our case cables. Most of these are going to be related to front panel stuff. So this is the USB 3.0 connector, right? To run, we've got where's the front panel? At the top. Yep. So these guys, right? We have a USB 3, USB 2, audio in, out. We have a light. We have a reset and a power button. All of this stuff need plumbed, if you will, need wired into the motherboard so that it's getting the information necessary to actually give that information or do those functions. And so that's what all of these cables are for. This is the USB one, which is going to fit somewhere on the motherboard. Probably this, based on my knowledge of the cable stuff looking. These can be a little bit sensitive as far as like bending the pin. So be cautious to plug those in. This one, the audio, probably labeled. It's here. I don't know if barely read. Wait. So this one you can determine direction because there is a 1 pin missing here. I can't pull that up. It is a pin space, but only 9 pins are occupied. So one of them's blank. So you can kind of find where that blank one is on here in the bottom left. The bottom. Jesus Christ. Really, really barely fitting. And that might have to get just mushed across the entire thing because I can't. Yeah. I don't want that cable to be that taut. Okay.
for how much pressure that feels like it's taking.
Damn it. Tolt. Double check that I'm putting that in. Oh, that's where the pin's missing. That's the pin's missing. You know, lines up in such a fashion. Oh man, that is tight. Yeah, that I don't love that cable's there, but I'm not nothing I can do about that. This is in the USB 2.0. Honestly, is a little bit wild. I mean, it's a cheap case. I don't really think we need to be having anything that is USB 2.0. This similarly is another like 5x2 array with one pin missing, notably a different location than the audio port I just put in. So you just kind of gotta check how that fits. These are also, this case is also nice. You probably can't, or not the case, the motherboard, you probably can't see it from that distance. Let me see if I can pick it up. But the ports actually have, you can see like COM and USB are like actually printed in the ports themselves. So you can just like look at it and see where it goes. I feel like that's at least a decent sort of compromise, since they don't send the manual like they used to. Okay, and then finally we have our sort of most annoying fiddly piece of connection ever, and it has always been annoying and fiddly. So these are a bunch of weird, disparate little connectors, like single or double pin guys, that are the main sort of front IO, but like it's the power switch, the reset switch, the hard drive LED activity indicator, and then power LED. And the thing is these are annoying because they go into this much larger set of pins than what we need here. So you actually have to like line up the damn thing and figure out where exactly it goes. It's sort of printed in there underneath power LED, the power and reset. There's also speaker, another power. There's PLE, WR for LED. I don't know why there's multiples, but we're just gonna use the other one. Okay, so power there's two power steps. Also, to be fair, they are not vital. Your PC will work without a power LED. And so I mentioned that there are connections for speaker in with the speaker that is referring to is the like warning or status speaker, which quite frankly usually doesn't exist. It's not really a thing. It's the thing that if you had an old PC, or old enough to have an old PC, that like every time you boot it up would have like just a single tone, right? A single steady tone for a moment. That was the status speaker. It could beep in certain pattern if something is wrong with the system. It would give you a different pattern if like the CPU wasn't connected properly, or if the RAM wasn't recognized, or the CPU was missing. Like, it would give you status information, but like nobody really does that anymore. And honestly, I think that's probably fine. A lot of high-end boards actually just have status indicators. Oh, that's true. Business PCs do come with those. Business tier PCs do still they have those stupid ass speakers. Actually, you can just order a teeny tiny speaker. You can actually order those speakers standalone, and you just plug them in, and they're just tiny little floaty speakers that just hang out at the bottom of your PC and beep at you. Like, if that's something you need, like if you maybe you need it to troubleshoot, you can get them. That is a thing. They haven't like disappeared entirely. They are still around. Okay. So hypothetically, this is now a functioning PC. We have our CPU in place, have our RAM in place. The 7700, the 7000 series of AMD CPUs do have an integrated GPU. So this does have the ability to output visuals, so that will work. We have a solid state drive, which actually isn't necessary to post the power on self test, but we do have one. We have our power supply. We have all our power connected. We have our front panel and things connected, so it should be able to turn on and off. Generally, this should be functional. In theory. That's where we're at right now. Let me... put on the back page. Okay. So, I would like to at least show the post, the power on self test on screen. I'm not going to install Windows. That later. Our standard issue power cable. Yeah, the in theory part is always kind of the stressful bit, because it's like, well, find out. Right. Plug this. Better on this side, actually. This long. Barely. See what is going on with the system. My cable. Obviously, we need a display, which, as I mentioned, I do have a display for them. Because they are still working with a very old, very small display. Oh, I lied. I did need the knife still. Okay, it's just over here. Okay. Now the trick is going to be... Well, I guess I can plug this in over there too. I can just unplug the work computer. You know, relatively inexpensive monitors have come a long way. This is a 27-inch 100 hertz monitor that I got them for $160. I should turn this over. I'm feeling something on the other end. 100 hertz is a very strange amount of hertz. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was fine if it was like 60 or 70 though, because I mean, it's a parent class computer. I should flip this over. We all know that it's gonna be playing YouTube. Like, they'd be fine. Ah, this is much easier. This is the correct way to remove. There we go. Hope this is the unboxing content you've come for. 'Cause cable. It comes with an HDMI cable too. Okay, so this is all the fittings to make a stand, which, of note, I'm not going to need right now. And I believe I'm also not going to need for my parents, because they have their monitor very weirdly attached to the back of a desk. The desk is weird. But their current one is attached. I don't know how they attached it exactly, but they're probably not going to need this. They'll get it in case, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's a little joystick for it. I was like, what is that nubbin on the back? Of course, you guys can't see the nubbin yet. Trying to keep my greasy mitts off the screen, although it's still got plastic on it. I don't really like applying a lot of pressure. This little guy, I was like, what the heck is that? The joystick for menu control. Okay, now that I've made a mess of my office, look at that big ass monitor. It's not really that big, but like in comparison to what they have, it feels like a big ass monitor. Also, monitors feel a lot bigger when they're just like sitting on your desk instead of sitting upright on your desk. Look at this thing. Look at it. That's crazy. All right. This is probably not going to be long enough to out there. Fortunately, I'm staring over there at a extension cable that is so much overkill to connect this to an outlet that's like 2 feet too far, 1 foot too far maybe, but well, I shall do what I must. Nope. All right, bonus unboxing, because it's actually not been opened this power. Yeah, look at this bonus unboxing. Extension cable. I don't actually remember what we got this for, but it's a big beefy extension cord. So that's gonna solve our too short cable problem with an extreme amount of overkill. So unnecessary. Oh. All right, we're gonna try to not unwind this as much as we possibly can get away with, because it's just right over there. I need like, oh damn, yank at least. Give me one winding, please, and then put everything back. Perfect. Do just fine. There. The result of my efforts. Still wound, and then the cable. Okay. Oh, right. I'm gonna need... Well, I don't necessarily need, but a mouse would be ideal if we get into the virus. Fortunately, I knew this was coming. and I have set aside my work. Ow. Back. I guess. Keyboard, just in case. Hopefully I don't need it, but the mouse doesn't work because the BIOS is, I don't know, shittier than I anticipate. Got it. Okay. Now, we have ourselves a moment of truth. So, not. I do need, act monitor. Being. Okay. I keep on. Hey, look. A monitor. And then, or which way? Power. I don't. That. Power. Success. Lights. Okay. Okay. Right, where are we at? Are we listening to the right? Okay. New CPU installed. Right. TPM. Y to reset FTPM. Yeah. This is promising. This is what we want to see. It's also upside down for you. Man, I had a moment. I heard that freaking internet sound and I was like, why would the computer possibly be making a dial-up tone? There's no... It's like, oh, wait. It's fine. All right, you're just gonna have to deal with it being upside down. Wait, hold on, I can fix that actually. Hold on. Doing some camera. Got it. Oh, wait. Hold on. With the magic of OBS. Like this. Ta-da! Okay. Except it's backward. Isn't it? It's backward. Vertical. Road. Now we're talking. Now we can see. All right. So we're going to hit Y to confirm. So what this is a newer thing. this TPM that I'm talking about, the FTPM, that's exactly why I went to build a new PC. This FTPM is like a hardware security feature, which kind of helps protect against... Honestly, I'm not actually sure what it tries to protect against. It's kind of horse crap because it just makes Windows able to be more restrictive or whatever, which I don't love. I think it's supposed to protect against some kind of vulnerabilities, but it sort of like ties the CPU to the hardware, like it protects it and like it encrypts, allows for better encryption and stuff. You can see here it's talking about BitLocker encryption. And if you reset this, it's not going to anymore function with the current encryption because it like loses the keys. But that's fine. We, one, are not encrypting, and two, there's nothing here. So we hit Y, and it should then set that up, and then hopefully come back around to the post where we can get into the BIOS. Huzzah! Okay. We have made it to a BIOS. And this is a very strange way for me to look at a BIOS because it's on the desktop. Okay. So we can see our... So this is a BIOS for anyone who is new to PC building. This is, you know, the sort of hardware level operating system to make hardware changes and setting choices and all that kind of stuff. You can also see information such as like, right, I'm literally pointing with a mouse and you can see my mouse. This is bizarre. So you see easily like CPU frequency, like temperatures, the voltage. You can see over here details about the DRAM, as well as, you know, what's installed up here. You can see that it recognizes the M2 drive we have in here, the 1000 for our 1000 gigabyte drive. There's some important settings like the resize bar support. This is important for modern systems and stuff. Got our fast boot. You can see our fan information, right? We got our CPU fan, no optional fan. And so here, we don't really need to do too much. Everything should work pretty much okay. The one thing that we always need to do when we're setting up a new system is because over here you can see, except for the glare, maybe I should turn off the light at this point. Hold on. All right, less glare. So over here, you can see it's reporting the DDR RAM at 4,800 megatransfers per second. Now, if you recall, I was mentioning that we were using a 6,000 megahertz or megatransfers RAM. And so the difference is here because this 4,800 is the... No, it is DDR5. 7,000 was the first on the AM5 platform. So 4,800 is the default speed for DDR5. Anything above that is technically overclocking. But it's like the most supported style of overclocking ever. AMD and Intel both have a standard sort of profile that allows for overclocking. You see it down here. XMP is the term for Intel. XPO is the AMD style profile. You can see here that we have it disabled currently. So we just go over here and we're like, hiya. And then we say XPO 1. Sure. Apply those. So that should then activate that. You won't see it change immediately. We're going to have to like confirm, save, and restart to get it to happen. But that should then apply the new speed. And that's generally the only thing you're going to need to do in BIOS for like
basic PC usage is going to be like, make sure that your RAM is running at the speed that you expect it to, which for an AMD CPU really should be the 6000. Anything else is going to be a little bit weird. So we're going to save and exit. We've got changes here. Yes. And hopefully we're going to be able to get back right into that BIOS. Give me the opportunity or go there automatic. I wonder if I don't have the HDMI in like the technically first position. That's why it sort of takes a long time and doesn't always make it. There we go. Well, that's not correct. Why are you still 4800? Okay. More complicated setup. Yeah, but are you running at that? I mean, it seems like it's playing going to. Definitely set up for that. Well, we'll have to see if that works. Once we get into actual Windows, we can validate that it's actually running at that speed that we want it to. Here, it's a little bit harder to tell. Don't have a boot drive yet. A USB to actually install. Oh, here we go. Memory frequency is showing at 6000, so that's great. Okay. Well, that being the case, correct? Is it? No, it is not correct. Get that. You're so wrong. How is this so wrong? Yeah, whatever. Okay. Well, so at this point, we have the BIOS running. We have it reporting all of the things that should be connected, and they seem to be there and running at the speeds that we're expecting. So this computer is now together. Like, this is a functioning computer. The next step will be, or would be, installation of an operating system. I'm going to install Windows because it's for parents, obviously. But you could install, you know, Linux or whatever distribution of that you like if you wanted to be going crazy with it. I mean, honestly, I doubt anybody building a PC for the first time would be using Linux. That seems odd to me, but, you know. But this is, at this point, like, success. We have built a computer in less than 4 hours? Yes. Honestly, like, an hour of it was me talking about choosing parts. So, it's a basic computer, but honestly, the installation of a GPU would not add very much time to the process. It's just a socket in, run power to it, and you're good. Honestly, a lot of the most time-consuming part of building a computer is going to be the Windows install, getting it set up, getting all of the applications there, potentially transferring data from an old PC, all of that stuff. But as it stands, we have succeeded in completing our build, and all of the parts worked. First try, everything was connected, power is working correctly. We are good to go. So, I think technically that brings our stream to conclusion. Like, we are done, and we have met with success. So that's great. I'm glad that that worked exactly as hoped and not causing any other problem. So yeah. At that point, we're all done. I guess the basic outro now applies. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for hanging out. Please do like the stream, I guess. Anybody that manages to show up, you know, to the VOD squad, if you will. Thanks for making it here. I hope this was helpful. But yeah, that's that. That's the PC build. So hopefully one of my goals with this was to hopefully show that it's not that intimidating to put together a PC. I think a lot of people think it's really scary. I don't think it's needs to be as scary as it seems. I hope that I have explained a lot of things so that folks might be armed with the information necessary to make choices and then put things together. I hope that I have covered some of the potential challenges or pitfalls so that people know what to avoid. And I hope that others can be encouraged to take on the challenge of building their own computer. Because I really like DIY PCs. One of my favorite things. The GPU market sucks ass right now, and it makes it really much harder to do this. So that sucks. But I still love PCs. So go forth, make PCs, enjoy the hobby of, designing, building, all this stuff. But for now, thanks for coming. I hope you have a good night. Normal streams will resume on Tuesday. Kappa, actually, I'm not going to be doing Final Fantasy IX on Tuesday. I actually have scheduled back with the gang. Me, Alpha, and Viri are going to be back to playing games. We're going to play Vermintide 2. I'm very excited about getting back with them. It's been quite some time since we finished up EDF6, and we haven't played that again, or played anything again together, so I'm very excited. But yeah, back to normal gameplay, back to the, VTuber avatar. We'll be back to our normally scheduled programming. If people like the IRL stuff, do give me suggestions for other things to potentially do. I have a setup that generally works now, so this is something that I can do in the future, but I don't really have a lot of ideas. I just like building PCs, so that's the thing I did. Other ideas, feel free to throw them into the Discord or whatever. But thanks all. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your weekend. See you next time. Bye.
Initiating goodnight sequence. Dispersing appropriate dosage of compound 347. Initiating phase 1 of memory calibration. This won't hurt a bit.